The education bill should be the most exciting bill of the session because it really is what defines our commitment to the future of our state. I have to say this bill is generating no enthusiasm or excitement, and there's a reason, because a zero budget target gives you zero excitement. And that's what we're left with today. I do want to just, we'll have some other folks talk about the specifics, but I just do want to step back a minute to a year ago and think about what we saw on the floor. So we had a $2 billion budget surplus, and the Republicans came forward with a bill that invested $1 in education for every $15 that they invested in tax cuts. And what we saw as a result of that is a Republican education bill that would have resulted in cuts and layoffs all across the state of Minnesota. So in a time of a $2 billion budget surplus, the Republicans were proposing essentially to cut education. Thankfully, Governor Dayton and the Senate Democrats insisted that we actually make a real commitment to education last year. And we ended up with a bill that did make some of those investments. A couple weeks ago, though, Kurt Doudt was speaking to a Tea Party crowd, and he said, and I think he spoke the truth at long last, and he said we had to increase funding, not because we, the Republicans, wanted to in education, but because the Democrats insisted. And that is, tells you a lot, I think, about where we are. And that same speech is when he talked about their goal is to starve the general fund, which, as you know, is primarily invested in education. So that's where the Republicans stand. Fast forward to today. We have a $900 million budget surplus. And if you recall, 15-1 last year, tax cuts to investment in education. This year, we see $18 in tax cuts, the $900 billion surplus, to $1 for every investment in education. They're going the wrong way. And I think that's really sad for the state of Minnesota. What this bill is, more than any other bill, is about our priorities. The Republicans have clearly made their priority tax cuts for well-connected special interests. The Democrats have made their priority investments in our kids and our future, investments in addressing this middle-class squeeze that we see with huge student debts. The next 4 weeks is really going to be defined by how that plays out. And I am hopeful that it's going to play out in favor of ordinary Minnesotans as opposed to the special interests. But Republicans are taking their position today. This is the Republican idea about what we should be doing for the future of our state of Minnesota. Give big tax cuts to special interests and not make the investments in education and higher education that we need to make sure our state is going to be prosperous in the future. And with that, I will turn it over to whoever wants to go. Erin, go ahead.
All right. I know that we'll have a debate today about education in the state of Minnesota, and as I almost called it the speaker. As Paul Thissen mentioned, we believe that education and an investment in education is an investment in the future of Minnesota. So I will say that I am disappointed in the bill that we're taking up today, primarily in the lack of investment in early learning. We will once again have a debate today on the floor about early learning and pre-K, but the Republicans have shown over and over again a lack of interest really in making any investment, any sturdy, durable investment in childcare, in pre-K, and in student debt. And in each of those examples, those are means by which we can prepare for our future, make sure that people that are graduating from college are participating in our economy fully without the burden of the debt that they're experiencing right now. Each session, we should make sure that we're doing our very best to prepare for our future. And in this example, I think the Republicans are taking a pass. Melissa?
It's such a shame. We have a $900 million surplus. About $500 million of it we expect to recur. The biggest financial problem families are facing in our state right now, student debt, crushing student debt. We're fifth highest in the nation, with the average student in Minnesota with a $30,000 student debt. During the Palenti years, we kept whacking at higher education, and tuitions went up. And now when you look across the country, our tuitions for our community colleges are higher than they should be. The University of Minnesota tuition is higher than it should be. When we were in charge, we froze tuition for all 4 years and all 2 years. We have the opportunity to do that. We have the money in the bank to do that. Who needs money more right now? Who needs financial support more? Big corporate special interests or families struggling with the cost of higher education? We think families struggling with the cost of higher education should be higher on the priority list.
Okay. Any questions? You missed the best part, Rachel. No, that's okay.
There is $55 million in spending through some loan repayment. Do you have where do you think that money, if that was the target, where do you think that money should have gone compared to where it is in this bill?
Well, I mean, the bigger problem for me is that, you know, in a time of $900 million surplus, $50 million doesn't do much. And when I made that 18-to-1 comparison, that's exactly what that is. I mean, I think that Erin and Melissa hit the nail on the head. Early childhood investment is going to pay off for us, and we have this huge burden on ordinary families around the cost of higher education debt. And those are where we should be prioritizing our efforts.
You know, we had a roundtable at North Hennepin Community College, and students were talking about trying to pay daycare, trying to pay for groceries, and trying to figure out how they were going to pay tuition. And they talked about how they couldn't even think about the debt that they were incurring, because if they spent any time thinking about the debt they were incurring, they couldn't focus on their classes at all. This is just inexcusable in a state that's currently has a surplus.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.